House of Kuru, Part 1, Chapter 27. The Birth of the Pandavas, Yudhishtira. Pandu approached the daughter of Kunti Bhoja and told her what the sage told her. The necessity of discharging his debts and duty was keeping him from attaining the secrets of the highest heavens. He needed offspring and told Kunti how much he desired for progeny. Dear wife, there is a practice among the kingly race that when there is a threat to the lineage, a sage possessed of austerity and complete control of the senses can be called upon to sire progeny. When Kunti stopped him, "Dear king," she interrupted, "I have a better proposal. A long time ago, when I was a young maiden, I assisted a mighty sage known as Durvasa in the performance of a fire ritual to please Rudra, the god of war, for the betterment of humanity," said Kunti, while Pandu was listening to her every word. "When the ritual was completed, Durvasa was pleased with my servitude and granted me with a very curious boon. He gave me a secret mantra, a sacred spell that, when chanted, could bind any god to bestow me a child," continued Kunti. "With your permission, my lord, we can invoke any god in the holy Veda and request him to bless us with a child," said Kunti, while Pandu's face was overjoyed. "Why did you not mention this to me earlier, Kunti? We could have saved precious time in the discharge of duty," chastised Pandu. Kunti bowed and mentioned, "You were insistent on your progress to the seventh heaven," defended Kunti. "Let us not waste more time," interjected Pandu. "Let's see, which god shall we invoke?" thought Pandu, like a little child choosing between a selection of delicious sweets. After some thought, he proclaimed, "Kunti, invoke Yama, the god of virtue and justice. It is befitting that we have his progeny for our firstborn. He is the ruler of the afterlife and the judge of men's souls. Sound judgment is a regal quality, perfect for the firstborn. Now go and invoke Yama Dharmaraja, the god of justice," commanded Pandu, when Kunti bowed and recollected the mantra provided by the sage Durvasa. Once she was confident she had the mantra in her mind, she asked, "Dear Lord, I have fully recollected the incantation by which we can bind the virtuous god of justice, Yama, for progeny. When shall we start?" Pandu was eager to commence immediately. "Why not today, this very instant?" he said. "My lord, let us wait for a more auspicious time. The wise say that the eldest son is best to be born under the star of Yudhishtira, the elder. It is most befitting," said the wise Kunti. Pandu agreed. On the day when the star Yudhishtira was at its peak under the constellation of Scorpio, when the auspicious hour of Abhijit commenced, the wise and virtuous Kunti, seated on a grass mat, began invoking the god of justice, Yama Dharmaraja. Pandu sat next to her, meditating on the form of Lord Yama, as he was described in the Holy Veda. As soon as she commenced the ritual, clouds covered the sun, and thunder and lightning was heard. Madri, along with the sages in the forest, began to experience fear. One of the most common symptoms of the arrival of Yama was fear. Even Pandu, the best bowman of the land, began to feel uncomfortable. Soon a massive thunderstorm broke out. Thunder and lightning was all that was heard, but Kunti's forbearance was amazing. she did not waver from chanting the incantation repeatedly. Suddenly there was a loud thud, and the ground beneath them reverberated under the thud. Kunti continued the incantation without pause, though now Pandu had obvious signs of fear etched on his face. All the sages in the hermitage had gathered around the auspicious couple in an attempt to catch a glimpse of the god of justice, who sends every soul in the afterlife to the respective hells or heavens. When each thud, Pandu's face showed obvious signs of fear. Thoughts like, what if Yama gets furious for such a petty boon, ran through his mind, while Kunti kept iterating over the mantra. Thunder roared loud, and the sound of thuds began to increase in frequency, and the sound of the thuds began to approach the virtuous couple. Kunti kept iterating on the incantation with extreme devotion and faith. Finally, a massive figure stood before them. Pandu was the first to open his eyes, and with it, his jaw dropped as he fervently began tapping Kunti, who was still in deep meditation on the mantra provided by Durvasa. The figure, holding a golden mace on one arm, a celestial whip which pulls souls out of their bodies on the other arm, was draped in bottle green vest with turquoise leg garments and a two-horned helmet covering his head. He had a large mustache and sat on top of a massive black bull with huge horns. The bull had a fiery nostril, and with each nostril breathing steam, and its eyes were blood red in color. Dark in complexion, with a large twirled mustache, Yama Dharmaraja had arrived, and he looked absolutely terrifying. All the sages and the seers in the forests began chanting hymns in praise of the god Yama from the holy Veda. A trembling Pandu was now throttling Kunti, who was in deep trance, muttering and reiterating the incantation, not knowing that her meditation had already borne fruit. The 15-foot figure stood before the meditating couple with a somber look. Finally, Kunti opened her eyes, and when she saw the massive towering figure, both Pandu and her stood up from their meditative pose, and they just reached the knees of the massive bull. Both folded their palms in respect and bowed before the god of justice and the afterlife. Kunti, using all the courage she could muster, looked up to Yama, a feat which even Pandu hesitated but eventually managed to do. O mighty Lord of the afterlife, O controller of the souls of beings, if you are pleased with the incantation uttered by me, then please, O tremendous being, knower of immortality, bequeath upon me a son who is of your equal, implored Kunti. And within an instant, the being gave a silent but deep nod. The deity slowly raised one palm, and a jet of bottle green light flashed from the center of his palm and into Kunti's forehead. An eerily familiar feeling swept her body as the glowing bottle green light hit her forehead. She felt a sudden heat engulfing her forehead, and the heat slithered down her spine and sat at the very bottom of her womb. The heat slowly started to take shape of a small apple, which then became the size of a small mango, all within moments of god Yama opening his palm. She now felt the heat taking life and could distinctly make out heartbeats. All the while she kept her palms folded and her eyes closed, and the sages in the vicinity were chanting hymns and mantras of the holy Veda, glorifying Yama, the god of justice. Pandu also had both his palms touching each other, prostrating before Yama while looking at Kunti. The heat was now the size of a watermelon, and so was the size of his stomach. She suddenly felt the tiredness of pregnancy and an exhausted Kunti sat down. Within a few more minutes, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, much to the excitement and joy of Pandu and the sages surrounding him. This child will become the foremost of all virtuous beings. He will be known for his virtue and piety. He will become the emperor of the entire earth, with every king bowing to him. He will be a master of law and virtue. He will be brave on the battlefield, and will be called Yudhishtira, for one who is steady in battle. This is my boon to him as his sire. He will have a portion of me running through his veins, thundered the god Yama, as each and every one bowed to the great god. As soon as they raised their heads, the god of justice had disappeared. God Yama vanished into thin air, and the weather was back to being sunny. The rain clouds had parted, and the thunderstorm withered away to reveal a bright sunny day and a very healthy baby boy kicking and cooing. Pandu's eyes welled with tears as he hugged his son, and the infant began to cry. The sages and the hermits inhabiting the forests all bowed with respect to the divine birth of the child and began uttering mantras and incantations to bless the child. Pandu's joy knew no bounds. He celebrated, he cheered, he carried the newborn over his shoulder, and he never stopped grinning. Kunti was pleased to see the love and happiness emanating from her husband. News of Pandu's firstborn had spread far and wide. It finally made to the palace of Hastinapura. Bhishma was overjoyed. Satyavati pranced to the throne room, and Ambalika, the mother of Pandu, swelled with pride as everyone celebrated. Everyone with the obvious exception of Dhritarashtra. Gandhari had been pregnant for over a year now, and she shone like a pregnant goddess, but unfortunately, a baby in the womb does not count as the scion, a law that Dhritarashtra had stubbornly tried to change. One morning, as soon as the arrival of the emperor of Hastinapura was announced, Dhritarashtra arrived and sat on the resplendent lion throne. He then bade the rest of his ministers and Bhishma, along with Vidura, to sit down. Having seated his ministry, he questioned Bhishma. "I hear, O lion of men, that the virtuous Pandu has obtained progeny. The valorous god of virtue, the forest hermits say, was the sire? Does this mean that his son is the scion to the lion throne?" asked Emperor of Hastinapura. "There is no doubt about it. The firstborn of the crowned king is and will be the future emperor of Hastinapura," replied Bhishma, very curtly, much to the dissatisfaction of Dhritarashtra.
I hope you liked today's episode of The House of Kuru. If you have not already, please subscribe to this channel and like this video so that you will be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thank you.